Hello scholars, today we are starting chapter number 20, the early human beings. The early human beings are the people who lived a life as the beginners. It was the time when the people were not having any resources for living a comfortable life. The early human beings lived in thick jungles along with dangerous wild animals. They were afraid of big and fierce animals. They lived a very harsh life, that is, a difficult life. There were no light, no cooked food, no transport in the life of early human beings. Let us know about the shelter of the early human beings. The early human beings lived in caves and on the branches of trees. As they moved from one place to another in search of food, they did not have the permanent shelter. With the passage of time, the early man started to live in the huts. Huts are the small houses made up of mud and straw. Let us talk about the early human beings' dresses. At the early time, there were no clothes, so the early human beings used the leaves of plants and the skins of animals. Let us learn about the tools. Do you know what are tools? Tools are the things which make our work easier and faster. Early man used stone tools, that is, the tools made up of stones, for hunting animals. These tools were sharp-edged. Spear was one of the tools used by them. The food of early human beings. The early human beings used raw fruits and animals' flesh to eat. They used sharp-edged stones and tools to hunt animals for their meat or flesh. Before the discovery of fire, the early men ate raw meat. That means the uncooked food. Later, the early men learned to lit the fire by rubbing two stones together. With this discovery of fire, there was a lot of change in the life of the early human beings. The early human beings worshipped fire as the god. But very soon they had realized that the fire kept away the wild animals and saved them in cold weather. They also noticed that fire made the flesh of animals tastier and easier to eat and digest. So they started roasting the meat before eating. In this way, they had started using fire for protecting themselves from the wild animals and from the cold weather. And they also used fire for cooking food. This great discovery of fire have changed the early man's life. They lived in groups and they moved from one place to another in search of food all together. The discovery of wheel, fire, and farming have changed the life of the early human beings. With the passage of time, humans continued to discover new things and made great progress. Whatever things or resources which we are using now for living a comfortable life are somehow discovered by the early human beings. Now we have reached at the end of the chapter. So let us revise what we have studied in this chapter number 20, the early human beings. In this chapter, we have studied that the early human beings lived in the thick forests and caves. The early men were afraid of big and fierce wild animals. The early man did not have permanent shelter. They used leaves of the trees and skin of animals to cover their bodies. They used raw fruits and animals' flesh as food. Discovery of fire had changed the life of the early men. I hope you have understood the chapter properly. Do the reading of the chapter and complete your written work of exercises, question answers and worksheet. Thank you.